Official case summaries. Unaltered footage. Transparent justice. You are watching bodycam incident reports.
Step away from the vehicle, now! Hands where I can see them!
Officer, I'm 74 years old. I'm pumping gas. Tell me exactly what crime you think I committed.
You match the description. Stop arguing and do what I say.
I am not resisting. I am a law-abiding American citizen, and you are escalating without...
The command cut through the humid afternoon air like a crack of a whip. It was a Tuesday just past 2:00 p.m., the kind of lazy, sun-drenched day where the only sound at the gas station should have been the rhythmic click of the fuel pump and the distant hum of traffic on the interstate. Elias Vance didn't flinch. He didn't jump. At 74 years old, with a spine that was still ramrod straight and hands that had steadied rifles in jungles and deserts, he wasn't easily startled. He simply paused, his hand resting on the nozzle fueling his pristine cherry-red 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle SS. Elias turned his head slowly, deliberate in every motion. He saw the reflection of the police cruiser in the chrome of his rear bumper before he saw the man standing behind him. Officer Kyle Braden was young, perhaps 28, with a high and tight haircut that looked fresh from the barber and a hand resting heavily on his holster. His stance was aggressive, bladed-away chest puffed out, ready for a fight that didn't exist. "Officer," Elias said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that carried the weight of decades of command. "I am pumping gas. Is there a problem?" "The problem is you ignored my command," Braden snapped, stepping closer, invading Elias's personal space. "I said step away from the vehicle, now." "I heard you," Elias replied, his eyes calm, scanning the officer's nameplate and badge number. "I am finishing my transaction. The tank is nearly full. Why are you approaching me with your hand on your weapon?" "We've had reports of credit card skimmers and fraudulent purchases in this area," Braden said, his voice rising, performing for an audience that wasn't there yet. "You fit the description of a suspect using stolen cards to fuel high-end vehicles." Elias looked at the pump, then back at Braden. "I fit the description, a 74-year-old man in a restored classic car. Officer, this vehicle is registered to me. The card in the reader is mine. If you will allow me to finish fueling, I will show you my identification." "Stop the pump now!" Braden shouted. Two pumps over, a woman in her 50s filling up her minivan stopped washing her windshield. She looked at Elias standing tall in his pressed khaki trousers and a polo shirt buttoned to the collar, and then at the young, shouting officer. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Elias sighed, a short exhalation through his nose. He had served 3 combat tours, 2 in Vietnam, 1 in the Persian Gulf. He had retired as a sergeant major of the Army. He had buried friends, trained battalions, and briefed generals, and now he was being barked at by a man who looked like he hadn't been born when Elias retired. "I am complying," Elias said, releasing the handle. The pump clicked off. "The transaction is complete. My hands are empty." He held them out, palms open, waist high. "Turn around and face the vehicle," Braden ordered, seeing the compliance not as cooperation but as a challenge to his authority. "Put your hands on the roof." "For a traffic stop?" Elias asked, his voice hardening slightly. "I am not in the vehicle. I have committed no infraction. You are detaining me. I want to know the specific articulable suspicion you have that I have committed a crime." Braden's face flushed a deep crimson. He wasn't used to people using legal terminology. He was used to fear. He was used to confusion. He wasn't used to a black man in a muscle car quoting Terry versus Ohio standards to him in a gas station parking lot. "You're resisting my investigation," Braden said, moving in. "And you're acting belligerent." "I am standing still," Elias corrected him. "I am asking you to justify your actions. That is not resistance. That is the First Amendment." "Last warning," Braden hissed, reaching for his handcuffs. "Get on the car." The woman with the phone stepped closer, the lens focused on the officer. "He's not doing anything," she called out, her voice shaking. "He's just getting gas." Officer Braden didn't look at the witness. He was locked in tunnel vision, taking over, driven by an ego that couldn't handle the calm, authoritative presence of the older man. To Braden, Elias's lack of fear was an insult. It was a refusal to submit to the hierarchy Braden believed existed between a badge and a civilian. "Sir, I am going to reach into my back pocket to retrieve my wallet," Elias announced, clearly ensuring his voice would be picked up by the bystander's phone and the officer's body camera. "My identification is inside. It will prove ownership of this vehicle and the credit card used." "Do not reach," Braden screamed, his hand jerking the taser from his belt, pointing it at Elias's chest. "Don't you move." Elias froze. He knew the look in Braden's eyes. He had seen it on raw recruits in the jungle when the panic set in when training went out the window and fear took the wheel. This officer was dangerous because he was scared and incompetent. "I am stationary," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice that had calmed panicked privates under mortar fire. "You are pointing a less lethal weapon at an unarmed senior citizen who is cooperating. Take a breath, Officer Braden. You are making a mistake that you cannot undo. Turn around." Braden holstered the taser and lunged forward, grabbing Elias's left wrist. He twisted it behind Elias's back with unnecessary force, leveraging the joint painfully. Elias didn't fight. He didn't pull away. He knew that any movement, even a flinch from pain, would be written up as resisting arrest or assault on an officer. He let his body go slack, allowing the momentum to push him against the hot metal of the Chevelle. "You are hurting my shoulder," Elias stated flatly. "I have a service-connected injury in that joint. I am not resisting." "Stop tensing up," Braden yelled, breathing hard, wrestling with a man who wasn't wrestling back. He slapped the cuffs onto Elias's wrists, ratcheting them too tight. The metal bit into the thin skin of the veteran's wrists. "You are under arrest for obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct," Braden panted, stepping back to admire his work. "Disorderly?" the woman recording shouted. "He was standing there. I have it all on video. He didn't do anything." "Back up, ma'am, or you're next." Braden pointed a finger at her. Elias turned his head to look at the officer. "You have detained me. You have arrested me. Now you must Miranda me if you intend to question me, but I suggest you check my back pocket first, because once you put me in that car, officer, you are sealing your fate." Braden laughed, a nervous, adrenaline-fueled sound. "I don't care who you think you are. You don't run this stop. I do." He reached into Elias's back pocket and yanked out the leather wallet. He flipped it open. The first thing he saw was the driver's license. Elias Vance, 74 years old. Clean record. But Braden didn't stop to process that. He was looking for the fake credit cards, the evidence that would justify his gut feeling. Instead, he found a military ID. Not just a standard retired ID, but a Department of Defense Common Access card, with a designation that Braden didn't immediately recognize, identifying Elias as a civilian liaison. Behind it was a small laminated card listing medical alerts and a folded piece of paper with a gold seal. "Is that the stolen card?" the woman heckled from the side. "Did you find the stolen card?" Braden shoved the wallet into his own pocket. He couldn't back down now. He had the cuffs on. The crowd was growing. If he released him now, he looked weak. He had to book him. He had to find something. "You can tell it to the judge," Braden said, grabbing Elias by the arm and marching him toward the patrol car. "I intend to," Elias said. "And I intend to speak to your watch commander and the city attorney and the press." Braden shoved Elias into the back of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat was unforgiving. Elias had to twist his body to accommodate his cuffed hands, his bad shoulder throbbing with a dull, familiar ache. He watched through the plexiglass as Braden got into the front seat, his hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. "Before we see just how badly this officer messed up, I need you to do something for me." Scroll down and leave a comment telling me if you think police officers should be required to carry personal liability insurance for mistakes like this. Yes or no. It's a debate we need to have. Now pay attention, because what happens at the station changes everything. The ride to the precinct was 12 minutes of heavy silence. The cruiser smelled of stale coffee, industrial disinfectant, and the nervous sweat of the man behind the wheel. Officer Braden kept glancing in the rearview mirror, perhaps expecting Elias to be shouting, kicking the door, or begging for release. That was what Braden was used to. He was accustomed to chaos. But Elias Vance gave him nothing. He sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his breathing controlled and rhythmic. In his mind, he wasn't in the back of a police car in 2024. He was back in the A Shao Valley in 1969, waiting for the extraction chopper. He was in the desert in 1991, waiting for the order to breach. He had learned patience in hell, and he could certainly exercise it in the back of a Ford Explorer. Braden turned on the radio, then turned it off. He tapped his fingers on the wheel. The silence was eating at him. It was a tactical silence, a weaponized calm that made the young officer question his own reality. Why isn't he mad? Braden thought. Why isn't he scared? They pulled into the sally port of the precinct. The heavy metal doors rolled down behind them, sealing them inside the concrete belly of the station. Braden hauled Elias out of the car. Watch your head, Braden said, the sarcasm dripping from his voice. Elias stepped out, his posture regaining its dignity immediately. He looked at the concrete walls, the fluorescent lights, and finally at the door leading to processing. Lead the way, officer. Braden pushed him toward the intake desk. Behind the high counter sat Sergeant Hank Miller. Miller was 56, a thick-necked man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much of the city's underbelly. He was reading a file, sipping from a mug that said, "World's Okayest Grandpa." "What you got, Braden?" Miller asked without looking up. "Resisting obstruction disorderly." Braden recited the litany. "Suspect matched a description for credit card fraud. Refused to comply with lawful orders." Miller looked up. He saw the young agitated officer. And then he looked at the prisoner. He saw a black man in his 70s dressed in clothes that cost more than Miller's weekly paycheck, standing with a discipline that was unmistakable. Miller's eyes traveled down to the lapel of Elias's polo shirt. There, pinned discreetly to the collar, was a small enamel pin. It wasn't flashy. Most people wouldn't know what it was. But Hank Miller knew. He had served in the infantry during Desert Storm. He knew what a distinguished service cross pin looked like. It was the second highest military decoration for heroism, just below the Medal of Honor. Miller slowly set his coffee mug down. He stood up, leaning over the desk. "Braden," Miller said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "Why is this man in handcuffs?" "I told you, Sarge. He was resisting investigation at the gas station." Miller looked at Elias. "Sir," Miller said, addressing the prisoner directly, "did you physically resist this officer?" "I did not," Elias replied. "I requested articulable suspicion for the stop. I was fueling my own vehicle. I offered my identification. The officer drew his taser, then physically engaged me." Miller looked back at Braden. "You drew a taser on a senior citizen. He was reaching—" Braden defended himself, but his voice cracked. "He was reaching for a weapon." "I was reaching for my wallet," Elias corrected, "which is currently in Officer Braden's pocket." Miller extended his hand over the counter. "Braden, give me the wallet, now." Braden hesitated, then pulled the leather wallet out and slapped it into Miller's hand. Miller opened it. He saw the military ID. He saw the rank Command Sergeant Major retired. He saw the Pentagon access card. He saw the driver's license. Miller looked at the address. It was in the wealthiest district of the city. He looked at the birth date. "Take the cuffs off," Miller said. It wasn't a suggestion. "Sarge," I have to process him, Braden argued. I can't just unarrest him. The report... I said... Miller walked around the desk, moving with a speed that belied his age. Take the damn cuffs off him right now, or I will rip them off myself and use them on you. The processing room went dead silent. 2 other officers who were booking a shoplifter stopped and stared. Braden's face went pale. He had never heard Sergeant Miller raise his voice like that. Miller was the rock of the station, the guy who kept everyone calm. Braden fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key into the slot on the first try. Elias stood patiently waiting. Finally, the mechanism clicked and the metal ratchets released. Elias brought his hands forward. He rotated his wrists, grimacing slightly as the blood flow returned. Deep red indentations circled both wrists. Sir, Sergeant Miller said, his tone completely different now, respectful, almost deferential. I need you to come with me. We're going to go to the watch commander's office. Do you need medical attention for your wrists or your shoulder? I will document my injuries later, Elias said, rubbing his left shoulder. Right now I want my property returned and I want that body camera footage secured. It's already uploading to the cloud, sir, Miller assured him. It can't be deleted. Miller turned to Braden. You, conference room B. Sit there. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch your phone. Don't write anything until the lieutenant gets here. But, Sarge... Go! Miller barked. Braden slinked away, looking like a scolded child. Miller guided Elias past the holding cells, past the drunk tank, and into the administrative hallway. He knocked on a heavy oak door and opened it without waiting for a response. Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins was reviewing budget reports. She looked up annoyed at the intrusion until she saw the look on Miller's face and the man standing beside him. Lieutenant, Miller said, we have a code red situation. Officer Braden just brought in Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance. Jenkins frowned. Okay, and? Braden arrested him for pumping gas in his own car, Miller said bluntly. Braden claimed he was a credit card fraud suspect. The Sergeant Major here, Miller gestured to Elias, is a Distinguished Service Cross recipient and currently serves as the Civilian Oversight Liaison for the Regional Veterans Administration. He knows the chief personally. Lieutenant Jenkins dropped her pen. She looked at Elias, really looked at him. She saw the dignity, the calm fury, and the red marks on his wrists. Please have a seat, sir, Jenkins said, standing up rapidly. Sergeant Miller, get him water, coffee, whatever he wants. I don't want coffee, Lieutenant, Elias said, remaining standing. I want to know why your officer felt comfortable profiling a black man in a classic car, threatening me with a taser and kidnapping me from a gas station in broad daylight. Jenkins swallowed hard. Kidnapping is a strong word, sir. Unlawful arrest is kidnapping under the color of law, Elias said, his voice filling the small office. He had no probable cause. He had no reasonable suspicion. He admitted he was acting on a vague description that I did not match. That is a Fourth Amendment violation. That is a civil rights violation. We will review the footage immediately, Jenkins promised. If what you say is true, it is true, Elias interrupted. And I am not the only one who has the footage. A civilian recorded the entire encounter. It is likely already on the internet. Jenkins closed her eyes for a brief second. She knew what that meant. The department was about to be in the center of a hurricane. Sergeant Miller, Jenkins said, opening her eyes. Pull the dash cam and body cam for Braden, right now. Bring it up on the monitor. 5 minutes later, the 3 of them stood in silence, watching the screen. They watched Braden escalate the situation within seconds. They heard Elias's calm voice. They saw the taser drawn on an unarmed senior citizen. They saw the painful way Braden twisted Elias's arm. When the video ended, Jenkins sat down heavily in her chair. There was no defense. There was no context that made this better. It was pure, unadulterated incompetence and bias. Sergeant Major, Jenkins said softly. I am going to release you immediately. We will drop all charges. This never should have happened. Elias leaned forward, placing his hands on her desk. Oh, Lieutenant, I am leaving, but this is not over. The doors to the precinct opened and Elias Vance walked out into the late afternoon sun. He wasn't alone. Lieutenant Jenkins and the hastily summoned Deputy Chief of Police, a man named Henderson, walked him to the curb. Mr. Vance again, we are deeply sorry for this misunderstanding, Deputy Chief Henderson said, trying to steer Elias toward a waiting unmarked police sedan that would drive him back to his car. We want to make this right. We'd like to offer you a ride back to your vehicle and we'll handle the towing fees if it was moved. Elias stopped on the sidewalk. He turned to face the brass. You keep calling it a misunderstanding, Chief. You are trying to sanitize it. A misunderstanding is when you bring me the wrong meal at a restaurant. This was an assault. We are opening an internal investigation, Henderson said, wiping sweat from his brow. Officer Braden has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. Paid vacation? Elias scoffed. Standard procedure. Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notepad he had requested from Sergeant Miller. I have written down a list of data I require to be preserved. I am formally notifying you of pending litigation. If 1 second of that body camera footage goes missing, if one line of Officer Braden's disciplinary history is redacted, I will add a spoliation of evidence claim to my federal lawsuit. Henderson stiffened. Sir, there's no need for threats. We can handle this quietly. We can sit down with the city manager and work out a settlement without dragging this through the courts. You want to buy my silence, Elias said, a sad smile touching his lips. You think because I am an old man, I just want a check so I can go away. You are mistaken. I spent 30 years fighting for this country. I fought for the Constitution, and today your officer used that Constitution as a doormat. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a police car. It was Elias's son, Marcus, a corporate attorney who had dropped everything when he got the one phone call Elias was allowed to make. Marcus stepped out looking furious. He was 6'2", dressed in a tailored suit, and he looked ready to tear the building down brick by brick. Dad, Marcus said, rushing over. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, son, Elias said, putting a hand on Marcus's shoulder to calm him. But we have work to do. Elias turned back to the deputy chief. I am not looking for a payout, Chief. I am looking for a purge. I want to know how many other men like me Officer Braden has stopped. I want to know who trained him. I want to know why his supervisor signed off on his behavior for... Elias glanced at the officer's service stripes he had memorized. 4 years. We will look into everything, Henderson promised, looking defeated. I know you will, Elias said, because my lawyers will be looking over your shoulder the entire time. He got into his son's car. As they pulled away, Elias looked back at the station. He didn't feel relief. He felt the cold, hard resolve of a mission commander. The battle had just begun. Have you ever had to file a complaint against a person in power? Did it work, or were you ignored? Type justice in the comments if you think the system needs to change, or back the blue if you think the officer was just doing his job. I want to know where you stand. By Wednesday morning, the story was no longer just a local incident. The bystander video titled "Hero in Handcuffs" had exploded across social media. It had 5 million views in 24 hours. The visual was undeniable: a dignified, elderly black man standing calmly while a young aggressive officer screamed and pointed a weapon at him. The contrast between Elias's discipline and Braden's chaos was striking. Then the internet sleuths went to work. They found out who Elias was. They posted pictures of him in his dress uniform, his chest heavy with medals. They posted photos of him volunteering at the VA hospital. The narrative wasn't just police arrest black man. It was police assault American hero. Elias sat in his living room, his wrist in a brace the doctor had confirmed a severe sprain and nerve compression. His lawyer, a shark of a civil rights attorney named Evelyn Moore, sat across from him. "The city attorney called," Evelyn said, looking at her notes. "They want to settle. They're offering $300,000 to make it go away before we file." "No," Elias said. He was drinking tea, looking out the window at his garden. "I told them that—" Evelyn smiled. "We filed the complaint an hour ago. Federal court, Section 1983 claim, excessive force, unlawful detention, false arrest. And we added a Monell claim against the city for failure to train." The media requests were piling up. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. They all wanted the veteran versus cop story. Elias agreed to one press conference. It was held on the steps of the federal courthouse. A sea of microphones waited. Veterans from the local American Legion men in motorcycle vests and hats with war ribbons stood behind him as a silent guard. Elias stepped to the podium. He didn't look frail. He looked formidable. "I served 3 combat tours." Elias began, his voice booming without a microphone. "I learned that authority without discipline is tyranny. When Officer Braden stopped me, he didn't see a citizen. He didn't see a veteran. He saw a stereotype. And because of that, he felt empowered to violate the very rights I bled to protect." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "This lawsuit is not about me. I can afford a lawyer. I know the law. This lawsuit is for the 19-year-old kid driving home from work who gets pulled over by Officer Braden and doesn't have the rank of Sergeant Major to protect him. We are going to expose the record. We are going to see the files." The statement sent shockwaves through the city administration. The mayor, facing an election year, was furious. He called the police chief into his office and demanded answers. "How did we let a guy with a DSC get arrested for pumping gas?" The mayor screamed. "The officer said he suspected fraud." The chief stammered. "The officer is a liability." The mayor slammed his hand on the desk. "Fix this, or you're gone." But it was too late to fix it quietly. The lawsuit forced the discovery phase, and what Evelyn Moore found in Officer Braden's personnel file was a ticking time bomb. The Internal Affairs investigation, under pressure from the federal lawsuit and the Department of Justice's watchful eye, began to dig deep. They couldn't do a surface-level job this time. The world was watching. They pulled 5 years of stop data for Officer Braden. The spreadsheet told a damning story. Braden had a habit. He liked to patrol the border between the affluent historic district and the lower-income neighborhoods. He specialized in pretextual stops. He would pull over older model luxury cars, Cadillacs, Lincolns, restored Chevys driven by minority men. His written reports were always vague. Suspicious movement. Failure to maintain lane. Obstructed view. But the stats didn't lie. In 4 years, Braden had stopped over 200 elderly Black and Hispanic men. He had issued citations in less than 5% of those stops. "He's fishing," Evelyn Moore said, slamming the deposition transcript onto the table in the conference room. "He pulls them over, harasses them, checks for warrants, runs their IDs, and when he finds nothing, he lets them go with a warning. He's violating rights on an industrial scale." But the smoking gun came from the dispatch logs. In his report for Elias's arrest, Braden had written, "I received a citizen tip regarding a Black male using multiple credit cards at the pump." Evelyn subpoenaed the 911 calls and the non-emergency line recordings for that day. There were none. No call, no tip, no concerned citizen. Evelyn deposed Braden. The video of the deposition was brutal. "Officer Braden," Evelyn asked, her voice razor sharp, "you stated you received a tip. Who gave you that tip?" "It was verbal. A passerby," Braden mumbled, looking at his union lawyer. "A passerby," Evelyn pressed. "Did you get their name?" "No." "Did you get their description?" "No." "Officer Braden, we have the security footage from the gas station for the 30 minutes prior to your arrival. You pulled into the lot, sat in your car for 2 minutes, and then approached Mr. Vance. No one walked up to your car. No one spoke to you. Are you aware that perjury in a federal deposition is a felony? Braden went silent. His face crumbled. The lie was exposed. There was no tip. He had seen a black man with a nice car and assumed he was a criminal. The Internal Affairs report was released 2 weeks later. It recommended immediate termination. It cited 22 counts of policy violations, falsifying reports, and constitutional overreach. But Elias wasn't done. He pushed for the district attorney to review the case for criminal charges against Braden. He filed a false police report, Elias told the press. If I did that, I would be in jail. Why is he different? The conclusion came swiftly, but the impact would last for years. Officer Kyle Braden was fired 3 months after the incident. The State Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission decertified him, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. His career was over at 28, a casualty of his own bias and arrogance. The city, desperate to end the bleeding, settled the lawsuit. They agreed to pay Elias Vance $1.2 million. It was a staggering amount for a case where there were no broken bones or gunshots. But the city knew that if they went to trial, a jury seeing Elias Vance, the war hero, on the stand would have given him 10 times that amount. Elias signed the settlement papers in his attorney's office. He looked at the check. "What are you going to do with it, Dad?" Marcus asked. "Buy a new car? Take a vacation?" Elias shook his head. "I don't need the money. I have my pension. I have my house." He picked up the check. "We are going to start the Vance Legal Defense Fund. It will provide free legal representation for veterans and seniors who have been victims of police misconduct. We're going to use their money to fight them." Elias returned to his life, but it was different now. When he went to the gas station, people waved. Officers from the department, the good ones, would stop by his house to shake his hand, trying to bridge the gap that Braden had blown wide open. One afternoon, Elias stood by his 1969 Chevelle, polishing the chrome bumper. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across his driveway. He looked at his wrists. The marks were gone, but the memory of the cold steel remained. He thought about the thousands of men who didn't have a distinguished service cross pin. He thought about the men who couldn't stay calm, who panicked, who reached, who died. He had won his battle, but the war was far from over. He wasn't just a retired soldier anymore. He was a guardian of a different kind. He had stood his ground not with a rifle, but with the truth. And in doing so, he had reminded an entire city that respect is not demanded by a badge. It is earned by character. What do you think? Was $1.2 million enough for the humiliation of a war hero? Or should the officer have faced jail time for falsifying his report? We need to talk about how we treat our elders and our veterans. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, or if it made you think, please hit that like button and share it. It helps us tell more stories that matter. Stay safe. Know your rights, and never forget that true power comes from standing still when the world tries to push you down. See you in the next one.
In a fast-paced world full of endless information, every authentic record forms a crucial narrative. Our primary mission is to dissect these narratives to reveal the undeniable truth. Thank you for trusting us and actively joining this analytical journey.